The blue and red lights reflected off of my camper windows like some demented disco ball, lighting up the tranquil lake in the background of my property. Two officers walked up to me with that tentative pace they use when they don't know what you've got. I was dressed in my work boots and dirty jeans, and I was carrying nothing more threatening than a clipboard filled with my building permits. Behind them, Karen Fitzgerald stood with her arms folded across her chest, tapping her foot as if she just caught a teenager toilet paper in her home. Her immaculately styled blonde hair didn't budge in the summer breeze, likely secured by a can full of hairspray and sheer spite. "Sir, we got a call for trespassing on this property," the younger officer explained, his hand resting loosely against his duty belt. I couldn't help but smile. "Officer, I own this piece of land. Purchased it 3 weeks ago. Would you care to see the deed?" Karen's face went an impressive purple color. "That's impossible. My son Kyle had first dibs on this parcel." And that's when I knew this was going to be one hell of a story. Let me back up a bit. My name is Daniel Patterson, and I'm a 28-year-old high school science teacher who have been saving for years to purchase my own little slice of heaven. When the lakefront property at 1427 Sunset Ridge Drive came on the market in the Clearwater Estates HOA community, I grabbed it quicker than my students kill over their phones at the sound of the bell. The bidding process was weeks long. I underwent inspections, negotiations, and more paperwork than I give a semester. But at last, the lot was mine. 7,000 square feet of excellent lakefront property with mature oak trees and a view that made my realtor green. I just finished signing the papers when I decided to put my camper onto the land. Nothing high-tech, just a place to sleep while I cleared the property and prepared for building. The first few days were great. I'd wake up to ducks swimming on the pond, spend my summer vacation designing where everything would go, and drift off to sleep to cricket symphonies. Then Karen arrived. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was marking out what a foundation would be when a golf cart came careening to the edge of my lot. Out passed a woman in her late 50s dressed in what I can only call militant suburban-style head-to-toe Lululemon, oversized sunglasses, on a cloudy day, and with a clipboard she carried around like a sword. "Excuse me," she yelled in that voice that signals to you right away that someone is about to make your day worse. "You can't be here." I stood up, brushing sawdust from my hands. "Good morning to you as well. I'm Daniel Patterson. Just acquired this lot." Her face cycled through a series of emotions before coming to rest on outraged incredulity. "That cannot be. There has to be some error." "No error. Closed on it last Monday. You have to be one of my new neighbors." She hauled herself up to her full 5 feet 4 inches. "I'm Karen Fitzgerald, HOA board president for Clearwater Estates, and I'm saying to you, there's been a horrible mistake. My son Kyle had his heart set on this lot. He said he wanted it first, that he was interested in it. I did my best to maintain a facial expression of neutrality, but inwardly, I was already drained. Well, that's bad luck for Kyle, but the lot went through a routine bidding process. I placed the winning bid. "You don't get it," she said. She moved closer, as if closeness would give her point validity. "Kyle's going to be an architect. He had this piece of property surveyed and had plans prepared. He took them around to me months ago. That's sweet. But taking his mother some drawings does not legally qualify him for ownership of property." Her nostrils flared. "We've been living in this neighborhood for 15 years. Kyle raised his family here. He should be first in line for any of the lakefront houses." I couldn't help but chuckle, which was clearly the incorrect response. "Ma'am, respectfully, real estate doesn't work like that. I followed proper procedures, made a decent offer, and purchased the house. I'm sorry if Kyle's disappointed, but this isn't over," she cut in, whirling on her designer sneakers and striding back to her golf cart. "I'll be checking your paperwork very carefully." Very carefully indeed. I stood there watching her race away, leaving tire tracks on my newly graveled driveway, and had the dismal feeling that my idyllic summer project had just taken a turn for the worse. The harassment began the very next day. I awoke to the discovery of a bright orange violation notice stuck to my camper door. It said that I was in violation of HOA Code 7. 3. 2 unauthorized structures. The camper had not been approved by the architectural committee, apparently. I'd done my research, however, Temporary structures for construction purposes were clearly permissible for up to 6 months. I had it in black and white. Then the emails, scores of them, all from K. Fitzgerald with Clearwater. Calm, they began politely enough. Dear Mr. Patterson, we found some inconsistencies in your buying documents, but soon grew to thinly disguised threats of defending the reputation of our community and seeing lots go to worthy families. I replied to the first couple with my permits and purchase receipts, but was arguing with a brick wall that had mastered typing. Each reply just created 3 new emails with more fantasy issues. A week went by, and things ratcheted up. I returned from a supply trip to discover my water had been cut off. I called the utility company and discovered that someone had called in a leak emergency at my address. It took 4 hours and a call from a baffled technician to get it powered back up. Bizarre, said the tech, rubbing his head. The caller had been quite insistent, but you have no problem with your connection. I knew quite well who that caller was. The following morning, I awoke to Kyle himself standing at the boundary of my land, snapping pictures on his phone. He was mid-20s, soft on the edges with the air of a man who'd never heard no his entire life. Can I assist you? I yelled out. He jumped like I caught him thieving. Just merely documenting the loss of natural habitat. Mom tells me you're going to clear-cut the entire lot. Your mom tells you a lot of things. None of them. True. I'm cutting down 3 dead trees, and that's all. He snorted. Whatever. This is my rightful property. Anyway, I found it first. Seeing isn't buying, Kyle. Mom says possession is 9/10 of the law. He retorted. Your mom should maybe Google what that actually is. Also, I own the deed. Though, he stormed off, likely to go tell Mommy about the nasty man who would not relinquish his legally owned property. The falsified complaints continued. Noise and fractions when I was operating power tools at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Parking infractions from my truck that was completely on my property. She even tried to dispute my boundary survey, which resulted in an uncomfortable afternoon with Surveyor, who verified that yes, I did indeed know where my own property boundaries lay. But Karen's coup de grace was 3 weeks later after our initial meeting. I was having lunch in my camper when the police vehicles arrived. And that gets us back to where we began with me standing there in work clothes and Karen insisting on my arrest for trespassing on my own property. Ma'am, the grizzled older cop said, laboriously attempting to keep professional patience. This man has shown us a valid deed and all the right papers. He owns the property, but Kyle had first dibs. Karen stomped her foot like a child. He announced to everyone at the Memorial Day barbecue that he was going to purchase it. The younger officer raised an eyebrow at his partner, clearly thinking, is she serious? That's not property law. The elder officer explained in a slow pace. Sir, I apologize for the trouble. We'll be leaving. This is harassment. Karen screamed. He's harassing my family by purchasing land my son was interested in. The older officer faced her again. Ma'am, dialing 911 for false calls is against the law. You've wasted emergency services. I would recommend you settle any disputes through proper civil means. As they drove off, Karen stood there spluttering. You haven't seen the end of this. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. Situations like, what? I called out after her. Situations where you don't get your way. She spun around, finger wagged at me as if she were casting a hex. Situations where strangers think they can come into our community and take whatever they can. You'll see. The board will invalidate the sale. I let her storm off and figured it was time to cease playing defense. The following morning, I went to the offices of Hartley & Associates, which deal in real estate and HOA litigation. Jennifer Hartley herself picked up my case after hearing me out and examining my documents. She called 911. Jennifer raised an eyebrow, squinting toward her hairline. And you have the paper trail of all these fake grievances. Each email, each notice, each timestamp I verified, setting a thick folder on her desk. She smiled. The lawyer's smile of finding a slam dunk case. Mr. Patterson, what Karen Fitzgerald has done is harassment, abuse of emergency services, and abuse of HOA power. We're going to file a complaint with the county, have a restraining order issued, and require a complete investigation into her behavior as HOA president. Can she really void my home sale? I asked, expressing my greatest fear. Jennifer laughed. Definitely not. HOA boards can't do that, no matter what she believes. But what we can do is hold her accountable for this action. As Jennifer worked her legal magic, I chose to do a little community outreach of my own. It turned out I wasn't the first individual Karen had intimidated. My next-door neighbor, a frail old man by the name of Frank Morrison, filled me in on the time she attempted to track him down $800 because his lawn was a half an inch too long. Tried to make her repaint her house because the color beige was too harsh. Frank explained, shaking his head on hands and knees in my yard at 6 a.m. Another neighbor, Jessica Torres, related that Karen had attempted to coerce her into repainting her house because the color beige was too harsh. She told me it did not match her chakras. Jessica told me, still baffled years later, I had no idea beige was capable of being aggressive. With the backing of the neighborhood and a thick binder of documentation, I went to the emergency HOA meeting Karen had summoned. The community center was crowded. Standing room only. The drama had evidently become the buzz in Clearwater Estates. Karen stood at the podium looking like she was speaking at the United Nations rather than a suburban HOA. Thanks for attending this emergency meeting, she said, her tone laced with insincere concern. I've summoned you here because we have a serious threat to the integrity of our community. She gave a speech that would have been impressive if only it was utterly divorced from reality. I was a dangerous stranger who had bent the system to steal property from a deserving member of the community, Karen declared. She even used air quotes. When at last she was done, the board president, a wearied-looking fellow named Richard Dalton, inquired if others wished to speak. I rose. I would. The room hummed as I approached the front. Folder clutched tightly. My name is Daniel Patterson. I'm a secondary school science teacher, not a scary stranger. I purchased a lot at 1427 Sunset Ridge entirely legally. I have all my documents here. I began setting papers out on the table. Here is my deed. Here is my receipt of payment. Here are my permits, which have been approved. Here are the 47 emails from Misfit Fitzgerald asking me to relinquish my lawfully acquired property. Here are the fictitious violation notices. Here's the police report when she called 911 on me for trespassing on my own property. Here is some of the other stuff. The board members leaned in, studying the evidence. Karen's face had turned from purple to white. But that's only the beginning. I went on. Here are sworn affidavits from 8 of your neighbors detailing Miss Fitzgerald's prior abuse of her HOA authority. And here's a letter from my lawyer explaining the legal action we're willing to pursue, including criminal charges for abuse of emergency services. The room burst into murmurs. Richard Dalton slammed his gavel. Mr. Fitzgerald, he uttered slowly, is any of this true? They don't get it. Karen shrieked. Kyle deserved that bunch. He had ambitions. He had aspirations. Did Kyle ever make an offer on the land? Richard asked. He was going to. He just had to save up a down payment. I instructed him to hold on until after his party day, because I was going to present him with money as a gift, and therefore he never ended up bidding for the property. Richard explained. Karen's mouth was opening and closing like that of a fish. He had dibs. She muttered finally. Richard glanced at the other board members, and they all nodded. I moved to officially apologize to Mr. Patterson for this harassment. All infractions against his property are hereby terminated. Second, summon another board member. In addition, Richard went on, I decided to initiate an investigation into Miss Fitzgerald's behavior as HOA president. Second, this time practically bellowed by half the room. The vote was unanimous. Karen held on to ping the podium as if it were the sole thing holding her up. You can't do this, she whispered, then more forcefully. You can't do this. I've been president for 8 years. I've protected this community from people like him. People like, what? Jessica Torres shouted. People who lawfully purchase property. People who obey the law. Frank Morrison chimed in. More people joined in. All the years of pent-up frustration at last. Richard had to pound his gavel again and again to get things under control. Miss Fitzgerald, subject to the investigation, you are suspended from any and all HOA board activities. Please turn over your keys to the office and your access to the HOA email system. Karen's fingers trembled as she dipped into her purse. The keys spilled onto the table with the sound of falling coins. She scanned the room, perhaps seeking sympathy, but saw only tired faces weary of her dictatorial behavior. Then she glared at me, and for an instant I believed she would leap across the table. "This isn't over," she spat. "Yes," Richard asserted decidedly. "It is." 2 weeks later, I was laying my foundation when Jennifer phoned with news. The investigation had uncovered many examples of Karen abusing her authority, including almost $10,000 worth of dubious fines she'd imposed over the years. The county prosecutor is weighing charges. Jennifer informed me abuse of 911 services by itself can land one a $5,000 fine and time in jail. What happened, Kyle? I wondered about the mama's boy who had started all this trouble. Jennifer laughed. From what I was told, he went back home with his father in Oregon. The shame was too great, I guess. The last HOA meeting regarding Karen's destiny was even more crowded than the emergency meeting. She took a seat in the front row with an attorney, who appeared to want to be anywhere but there. The board delivered their report: years of harassment, misappropriation of funds, and abuse of authority. The vote to remove her from the board for good was unanimous. But the rail kicker was when the county prosecutors rose to read the criminal charges. Karen Fitzgerald, you are charged with abuse of emergency services, a misdemeanor carrying up to $5,000 in fines, and 90 days in prison. Karen leapt to her feet. 90 days for attempting to defend my community. You called 911 to report a bogus crime. The prosecutor stated bluntly, "You're fortunate we're not filing other harassment charges." Her attorney whispered frantically in her ear, most likely telling her to just shut up before she incriminated herself further. She slumped back into her seat, the battle finally draining from her. Ultimately, she received 30 days in jail, suspended community service, and an entire $5,000 fine. As the gavel fell on her sentence, Karen Fitzgerald took one last glance around the room, perhaps finally realizing that dibs wasn't a law. Her mouth hung open and shut silently, a stream of tears running down her face as the truth dawned on her. The Queen of Clearwater Estates had been overthrown, and all because she believed her son's desires took precedence over the